Rain poured onto the busy city streets, bouncing off the silver hoods of luxury cars and soaking the sidewalks. People rushed by in expensive coats, eyes glued to their phones, umbrellas tilted against the wind. No one noticed the small figure standing barefoot near the entrance of Harmon Industries. 10-year-old Darius clutched a cracked wooden shoeshine box to his chest. His clothes were too thin for the weather, and the hem of his oversized shirt clung to his knees. He looked up at the towering glass building, then took a breath. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out of the building, polished shoes clicking against the wet pavement. He was surrounded by assistants and bodyguards, speaking fast and loud, clearly someone important. Darius stepped forward, blocking the man's path. His voice trembled, but he spoke up. "Please, just $10. I'll shine your shoes, sir. I'm not asking for free. I need to buy my mom's medicine." The group around the man slowed, startled. A few assistants scoffed. One tried to move the boy aside, but the man, Cole Harmon, CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city, paused. His cold blue eyes studied Darius for a moment. He said nothing. Darius quickly knelt and opened his box. Inside were a few rags, a tin of cheap polish, and a small brush worn down from use. He didn't beg again. He simply picked up the rag and reached for the man's shoe. Cole looked down. He slowly extended his right foot. "Go ahead," he said. Darius worked quickly but carefully, wiping the damp leather with precision. His hands shook from the cold, but he focused, just like his mother taught him. Do a job well, even if the world doesn't care. When he finished, he looked up, soaked to the bone, his fingers blackened by polish. Cole didn't speak. He simply reached into his coat, pulled out a folded bill and dropped it into the box. Without waiting for a thank you, he turned and walked off into his black car. Darius looked inside. Not $10. A crisp $100 bill sat on top of his polish rag. His breath caught. He stood in the rain, stunned. Then, gripping the box tightly, he turned and ran. Not toward the crowd, not toward the cars, but home. To his mother. Darius pushed open the motel door with his shoulder, careful not to drop the shoeshine box. The hallway behind him smelled of mildew and old cigarettes, but inside the room, it was quiet. Just the soft wheezing of his mother's breath. "Mom?" he called gently. The room was dim, lit only by a flickering lamp in the corner. His mother, Angela, lay curled on the edge of the mattress. Her face was pale, and beads of sweat dotted her forehead. A bottle of water sat beside her, half empty. The insulin vial on the table had only a few drops left. Darius knelt beside her. "I got the money," he whispered. "I shined a man's shoes. He gave me 100. Angela opened her eyes slowly. They were tired, but warm. She smiled faintly. 100? She said, voice raspy. That must have been some shine. Darius grinned, though his eyes were wet. I tried my best. She reached out and squeezed his hand weakly. You always do, baby. Darius stood and opened the small fridge. He pulled out the bread and jelly, both nearly gone, and made her a sandwich, cutting it with the plastic knife they kept from the shelter. She tried to sit up, wincing from the pain in her side. Easy, he said, supporting her back with a pillow. He fed her small bites until she could take the rest herself. Then, he sat beside her, head resting on her shoulder. Angela brushed a hand across his hair. You shouldn't be the one taking care of me, she whispered. I want to, Darius said. I'm going to get you more medicine tomorrow, and food, and everything. Angela didn't answer right away. Her eyes were already closing. But before she drifted off, she whispered, You're my whole world, Darius. No matter what we lose. I never lost you. He stayed awake long after she fell asleep, watching her chest rise and fall. The rain tapped against the window. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, his mom had eaten. She was safe, and that was enough. Cole Harmon sat behind his towering glass desk, high above the city. Rain streaked down the windows like tears trying to get in. But nothing ever got in here. Not cold, not noise, not people like that boy. Still, Cole couldn't concentrate. The board meeting had ended 2 hours ago. Reports were stacked in front of him, and his assistant had just reminded him twice to sign off on the new acquisition. But his mind wasn't on contracts or quarterly growth. It was on the kid. That shoeshine boy. The one who asked for $10, not for games, not for food, but for his mother's medicine. Cole leaned back in his leather chair and stared at the ceiling. When was the last time someone looked at him like that? Desperate, determined, honest. His assistant, Melissa, knocked and entered. You've got a meeting at 3, then the investor call at 4. Also, the press is still on the story about your security detail pushing away that street vendor last week. Cole barely heard her. Find that boy, he said suddenly. Melissa blinked. Sir? The one from earlier, shoeshine box, barefoot. He cleaned my shoes. You want me to find him? She asked cautiously. Discreetly, Cole said. I'm not adopting him, I just want to know where he came from, that's all. Melissa nodded slowly. I'll make a few calls. As she stepped out, Cole stood and walked toward the window. Far below, people moved like ants, some rushing to meetings, others to nowhere at all. Somewhere out there, a child was scrubbing shoes to keep his mother alive. Cole had once known hunger like that, but that was decades ago, long before suits and stock tickers, long before he taught himself never to feel anything that could slow him down. He hadn't remembered that version of himself in years. Until now. The bell above the pharmacy door jingled as Darius stepped inside, clutching the folded $100 bill in his damp fist. His shoes squished with water, his pants still soaked from the morning rain, but he didn't care. He stepped up to the counter, barely tall enough to see over it. The pharmacist glanced at him, then returned to typing. Help you with something? Darius held up a slip of paper. His mother's prescription for insulin. I need to fill this. Please. The pharmacist took the slip and squinted at it. Angela Barnes? He clicked through something on his screen. Looks like there's a balance on her account, overdue. I have money, Darius said quickly, holding up the bill. The man sighed. It's not that simple. She's flagged in the system. No insurance, outstanding copay, denied Medicaid. You can't just walk in here with cash. But it's for my mom, Darius said, voice rising. She's sick right now. I can pay, please. Listen, kid, I'm sorry, but I've got rules. I can't override billing without the manager, and he's not in until tomorrow. Darius's face dropped. She might not make it till tomorrow. A security guard watching from the corner stepped closer. Let's go, son, he said gruffly. You're making a scene. I'm not, Darius started, but the guard gently pushed him back from the counter. Tears welled up in his eyes. His mother needed that medicine. He had the money. But still, they wouldn't help. Just then, a mop bucket squeaked across the floor. An elderly janitor with gray hair and kind eyes had been watching the whole thing from behind a shelf of paper towels. He stepped forward quietly. How much is it? He asked the pharmacist. The man frowned. It's $89 for the vial she needs. The janitor pulled a small leather wallet from his back pocket. He slowly counted out 5 20s, then handed them over. Put it on my card, he said. The pharmacist shrugged. Suit yourself. Darius stared at the man. Why would you do that? The janitor bent down slightly to meet his eyes. Because no kid should have to beg for something his mother needs to stay alive. Darius swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, sir. The man nodded. Go on now. Take it to her. Darius clutched the small brown bag in both hands like it was made of gold and turned to leave. As the door closed behind him, the janitor returned to his mop. He didn't ask for thanks. He just kept cleaning. Darius ran the whole way back to the motel, his small hands wrapped tightly around the paper bag. The medicine inside thumped against his chest with every step. His heart pounded from more than just the sprint. He was racing time. The door to room 6 stuck as always, and he had to shoulder it open. "Mama," he called as soon as he stepped in. But the room was too quiet. Angela lay on the mattress, still as stone. Her arm had slipped from the edge of the bed, and the color in her face had drained. Her breathing was shallow, so faint it barely stirred her chest. Darius dropped the bag and rushed to her side. Mama, I got it. I got your insulin," he said, shaking her shoulder gently. Nothing. Tears sprang to his eyes. He fumbled through the bag, pulling out the vial and syringe, his hands trembling. He didn't know how much to give. He had watched her do it 100 times, but never dared to try himself. With shaking fingers, he drew the medicine like he'd seen her do, wiped her arm, and gave the injection. "Please, Mama, please wake up," he whispered. He sat beside her, holding her hand. A few minutes passed. Nothing. Then, her fingers twitched. Darius gasped. He leaned in as she gave a low moan, her eyelids fluttering. "Mama," he said. Her eyes slowly opened, confused and glassy. She tried to sit up but winced in pain. "It's okay," Darius said quickly. "You don't have to move. I gave you the shot." Angela blinked, her eyes adjusting. You did?" He nodded. "I got the medicine. A man helped, the janitor, and I used the money. The man with the shoes." Angela looked at her son, his face streaked with rain, dirt, and now tears. Her eyes filled, and she reached up to stroke his cheek. "You saved me, baby," she whispered. "No," he said, voice cracking. "You always save me." She pulled him close, and he curled into her arms like he used to when he was small. Outside, the motel sign flickered in the rain. Inside, mother and son lay quietly, surrounded by the steady hum of survival. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the soft beeping of monitors and the slow rhythm of Angela's breathing. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly. Darius sat by her bedside, his head resting on the edge of the mattress, eyes heavy but open. Angela had been admitted late last night, after another episode that left her too weak to move. Darius had called 911, and the ambulance had taken her away. He rode in the back, holding her hand the whole time. Now she slept peacefully for the first time in days. A nurse walked in and checked the monitors, giving Darius a gentle smile. "She's stable now. That insulin dose you gave her probably bought her just enough time." Darius nodded quietly. He didn't feel brave, just tired. He looked around the room. Everything was clean and bright, so different from the motel. A real bed, fresh sheets, the soft scent of disinfectant. It felt like another world. Too good for them. "Do we have to leave soon?" he asked. The nurse paused. "Not yet, sweetheart. Someone covered the bill." Darius blinked. "Who?" She shook her head. "Anonymous. It just says it's taken care of." He looked back at his mother, still sleeping, and felt a warmth in his chest. Someone out there had cared. Later that day, as the sun filtered through the window blinds, Angela stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open. She turned her head and saw Darius sitting in the chair, feet dangling, holding a cup of water. "Hey, Mama," he whispered. Angela smiled, weak but full of love. "Hey, baby." "You're okay," he said, tears welling again. "You're really okay." Angela nodded slowly. "Thanks to you." Darius handed her the water and she took a sip. "Where are we?" "The hospital, but like, the good part," he said, "with real beds." Angela chuckled faintly, then looked at him with motherly pride. "You did all this?" "I just didn't want to lose you," he whispered. Angela reached for his hand. "You didn't, and I didn't lose you either." They sat together like that for a long while, holding on to each other. And somewhere down the hall, unseen, a man in a suit stood watching from behind a glass panel. He didn't enter. He didn't speak. He just turned and walked away. Silent, but changed. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the small recovery room as Angela slowly folded the last of her clothes into a donated suitcase. Her strength had returned in pieces, small steps, quiet mornings, full breaths. She moved slower than she used to, but with peace now. Real peace. Darius sat by the window, flipping through a folder filled with papers, pictures, and something new: hope. The documents were neatly printed, stamped, and official-looking. He didn't understand all the legal words, but the name on the cover made his chest tighten. The Shine Project, a foundation for working families. I still don't get why he named it after me, Darius said, turning to his mom. He's the one with all the money. Angela smiled as she zipped the suitcase, because sometimes the person with the least gives the most. Cole Harmon had come to visit them the week before, not with cameras, not with bodyguards, just himself. He'd sat beside Angela and listened. He'd ask questions not about money but about needs, what people like her faced every day, what kids like Darius carried without complaint. She told him the truth. We don't need charity, we need chances. And he listened. Now a small new nonprofit had been launched in Darius's name. Its mission was simple: help struggling families afford basic needs, medicine, food, rent. No interest, no judgment, just help for those willing to work and trying to survive. Angela had agreed on one condition: that she could help, not just as a face, but as a voice. She would speak to schools, clinics, and shelters. She'd tell her story, if it helped others tell theirs. Darius stood and looked around the room, picking up the shoe shine box from the corner. He still kept it close, even though he hadn't used it in weeks. It reminded him where he came from and what he was capable of. As they stepped into the lobby to leave the hospital, a nurse handed Angela a small envelope. Inside was a note. To the boy who made me remember where I started, and the mother who never let go. May this project shine a light on every family like yours. CH. Angela smiled softly and slipped the note into her purse. Outside, the air felt different. It wasn't just the sunshine or the clear sky. It was the feeling that, for the first time in a long time, their story wasn't just about surviving. It was about becoming something more. 3 years later, the streets looked different to Darius. Not because the city had changed, but because he had. He stood in front of the newly opened Shine Project Community Center, wearing a neat button-up shirt and clean sneakers, surrounded by a small crowd of families, kids, and local volunteers. His hair was longer now, his shoulders broader, but his eyes still held the same quiet fire. Beside him stood his mother, Angela, holding a clipboard and offering warm hugs to every single person who walked through the door. Inside, shelves were stocked with food, free medication was available for registered families, and children lined up to receive school supplies, all funded by the foundation that bore his name. The Shine Project had expanded far beyond what anyone imagined. What started as a quiet act of kindness had sparked something bigger: donations from all over the country, volunteers from every walk of life, and dozens of families lifted from the edge of survival. But Darius didn't care about the headlines or praise. He cared about the boy in line now, barefoot just like he once was, clutching a note for asthma medication and looking nervously at the front desk. Darius walked over and knelt down. "First time here?" he asked gently. The boy nodded. "Well, I used to come here too," Darius said, smiling, "and now I help run the place, so you're going to be just fine." He led the boy inside and introduced him to the staff-like family. Later that afternoon, when things had quieted down, Darius walked into his small office in the back. On the wall hung his old shoe shine box, framed, still dusty, with the same worn-down rag. Angela stepped in with 2 cups of cocoa. "You know," she said, handing him one, "you never told me what made you go up to that man's shoes that day." Darius smiled. "I don't know. Something just told me. Don't ask for help. Offer something first." She nodded. "You offered the world more than you knew." They sat in silence for a moment, sipping their cocoa. A breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the sounds of laughter from the front of the building. Outside, a mural painted on the brick wall showed a young boy polishing shoes beneath the words, "One shine, one chance, one change." And beneath that, in smaller text, "Inspired by Darius Angela Barnes. Founded by Cole Harmon." Darius leaned back and closed his eyes. They hadn't just survived. They had given others a reason to believe again.